Hey guys, today we're going to be going over my February TBR. So like last month, I want to be picking up the book that has been on my Goodreads TBR for the longest, and that is now The Husband's Secret by Liane Moriarty. I don't know when exactly I put this on my TBR. Obviously, it must have been a while now, and I have read a couple of books by her already. I've read Big Little Lies, which is probably her most popular at this point, and I really loved that. I thought that was a great sort of mystery, and I really liked the domestic element. I've also read Nine Perfect Strangers, which I liked less because I thought it was a little tonally confused, but this seems to have elements from Big Little Lies that I liked, or similar to Big Little Lies at least, that I liked. So I'm gonna be picking this one up and hopefully I'll enjoy it. Again, she's a little hit or miss for me, but this one sounds intriguing. It's about a wife who finds a letter that her husband wrote to her to be opened after his death. And that letter contains his deepest, darkest secret, but she finds it and opens it while he's very much alive, and that has repercussions on her life and her marriage, as well as the lives of other people around them. So, very curious to see what is in that letter and what the secret is. So, I'm excited to get to this one. I've owned it for quite some time. It's been on my Goodreads list for a really long time, and finally going to be getting to it. Next up is actually a book that I'm currently in the middle of, and that is The Witcher: The Last Wish. This is the illustrated edition. It is very pretty. I'm about 2 stories in. This is a short story collection, if you don't know, and it seems to have a lot of stories that season 1 pulled from. So far, there has been a story that was in season 2 of the show, but it seems like foundational sort of stuff for Geralt, and excited to finally start reading this series. I've enjoyed the show obviously for quite some time, and I've never played the games, but I know they're very popular. My cat is running around in the background. If you hear a bell, sorry. But yeah, so this has been pretty good so far. I'm enjoying it. It's been a fairly quick read as well. I just haven't had a whole lot of time to devote to it. So I was hoping to finish this in January, but that was not in the cards, so I'm going to be reading it in February. Next up is a book I'm going to be buddy reading with my best friend Stephanie, and that is The We Hunt the Flame by Hafsa Faizal. This is a much-loved YA fantasy that takes place or is inspired by ancient Arabia. It's been on my radar for a really long time. This has also been on my Goodreads TBR for quite some time as well, and I've owned it for a while. I think one of my first book hauls on this channel actually included this book, so it has been on my shelf for quite some time, so I'm excited to be finally reading it, much less with my friend Stephanie. I think we're both gonna like this one. It's, again, pretty hyped. I'm hoping it doesn't, fail to live up to that hype, but I feel like this is a booktube darling for a reason, and it's part 1 of a duology, I believe, and the second book is out, so I'm hoping that if I like this one, I'll be able to pick the second one and read it pretty quickly after. I don't know a whole lot about this one. The main character is Zafira, and she's a hunter who disguises herself as a man when she braves the cursed forest of the Ars to feed her people. Nasir, I think, is our secondary character, and he's the Prince of Death, assassinating those foolish enough to defy his autocratic father, the Sultan. If Zafira is exposed as a girl, all of her achievements will be rejected. If Nasir displays his compassion, his father will punish him in the most brutal of ways. Both Zafira and Nasir are legends in the kingdom of Arawia, but neither wants to be. So I believe this is enemies to lovers, and I'm so excited to read this. I don't think I've ever read a story inspired by ancient Arabia, so that'll be interesting as well. And I'm so excited to get into this with Stephanie. Last month I read A Darker Shade of Magic by B.E. Schwab and really quite enjoyed it, so I'm going to be picking up A Gathering of Shadows next. I think this book seems to focus more on Lila Bard, who is one of the main characters from the first one, along with Cal. And I don't know where this is going, and I don't want to look too much into the synopsis, so it is still a surprise, but the series as a whole is a portal fantasy. One character, Cal, is an Antari, which is like a blood magician, and he is one of 2 people who can travel between different sort of worlds, and all of these worlds have the city of London sort of in common, but nothing about them otherwise is similar. So his London is Red London, and it is a magical place. He's able to travel to Grey London, which is sort of our world. There is not so much magic. If any, White London is a place where there is magic, but the world itself is very sort of survival of the fittest. Those in power have come to power by like killing and crawling their way for it. And then there's also Black London, which is gone. Magic sort of overwhelmed it and destroyed that land. It's a really fun adventure story. It has a very like classic adventure feel to it. And I had a lot of fun with the first one. It was very fast paced, was a very quick read. I have heard this is a little bit slower, but I'm honestly okay with that because I think book one actually moved a little too fast. So I'm hoping we get more character development in this one because that's something I felt like I was missing in the first one. So yeah, I'm excited to get into this and see what our characters are up to and how the story continues to develop. I love a good portal fantasy, and this has been a really fun one. Next up, we have a couple romances because next month is February and we have Valentine's Day. First is Taylor Jenkins Reid, Maybe in Another Life. This is one of her older books. I feel like she's a lot more well-known for sort of historical fiction lately, but this is, I don't know actually when this exactly came out, but it sounds really good. So the back says, at the age of 29, Hannah Martin still has no idea what she wants to do with her life. Relatable. She has lived in 6 different cities and has held countless meaningless jobs since college, but on the heels of a disastrous breakup, she has finally returned to her hometown of Los Angeles. To celebrate her first night back, her best friend Gabby takes Hannah out to a bar where she bumps into her high school boyfriend, Ethan. It's just past midnight when Gabby asks Hannah if she's ready to go. Ethan quickly offers to give her a ride later if she wants to stay. Hannah hesitates. What happens if she leaves with Gabby? What happens if she leaves with Ethan? In concurrent storylines, Hannah lives out the effects of each decision. Quickly, these parallel universes develop into surprisingly different stories with far-reaching consequences for Hannah and the people around her, raising the question including, is anything meant to be? How much in our lives is determined by chance? And most compellingly, is there such thing as a soulmate? And Hannah believes there is. And in both worlds, she believes she's found him. So this is really interesting. I like the idea of sort of, again, like these parallel worlds and how much one decision can affect your life. And I'm interested in how Taylor Jenkins Reid sort of explores that in like these two diverging storylines. That was a lot different than anything else I've read by her. Again, most of the stuff that I have read by her has been like historical fiction and like really family and like relationship sort of driven. Obviously, this has a great deal to do with relationships, so I'm curious to see sort of how her writing has developed, because again, this is an older book, so I'm very curious about it, and I've had it for a little bit now, and I'm hoping it has a good love story, at least one. Seems like there's gonna be 2, but I'm in the mood for a good sort of like emotional story, and I'm hoping this delivers. Then we have one from Christina Lauren's backlog, and that is Love in Other Words. This one I think is like a second chance romance. The back says, Macy Sorensen is settling into an ambitious, if emotionally tepid routine. Work hard as a new pediatrics resident, plan her wedding to an older, financially secure man, keep her head down, and tuck her heart away. But when she runs into Elliot Petropoulos, the first and only love of her life, the careful bubble she has constructed begins to dissolve. Once upon a time, Elliot was Macy's entire world, growing from her gangly, bookish friend into the man who coaxed her heart open again, only to break it on the very night he declared his love for her. So it seems like it's told in alternating storylines between, like, their relationship before and then sort of the more, like, present-day timeline, and I don't know, second chance romances have not always been my favorite, but I think when they're done well, they're really good, and this seems to be, like, kind of gut-wrenching, so again, I'm sort of in the mood for a more sort of emotionally charged love story. I'm hoping this delivers. I have heard really good things about this. Christina Lauren's been a little hit or miss for me lately, so I'm hoping there's some redemption in this book. But yeah, I'm excited to get into this one. Next up, we have a book that my friend Stephanie got me for my birthday and also recommended that I read this month, and that is The Inheritance of Arcadia Divina by Zoraida Cordova. I've heard really good things about this. This was a book of the month choice a couple months ago. It seems to have an air of magical realism. I don't know, it's been on my radar and I've been really interested in reading it, and I was so excited when Stephanie got it for me for my birthday and that she's given me the nudge to read it this month as well. Obviously, this deals with a woman named Arcadia Divina, and she, I believe, is on her deathbed, and her family comes to sort of say their goodbyes, and she also like bequeaths some magical stuff upon them. And I think it also sort of bounces back and forth between her life as a younger woman and the present day timeline now. It sounds beautiful. I've heard good things. So I think there's also a person who's trying to like pick off her family, like, and destroy Arcadia's line. So there's an element, mystery element in it as well. It also looks like a pretty short read, so looking to finally pick this one up and see what all the hype is about. Next up, we have a much anticipated sequel for me, and that is The Boneshard Emperor by Andrea Stewart. This is a sequel to The Boneshard Daughter, which came out in 2020. I read that one and I loved it last year, and I've been so excited to pick this one up. My boyfriend Zach got it for me for Christmas, and I've been like really excited to read it ever since, but I had my January TBR all picked out before Christmas, and I've really been trying to stick to my TBRs, so I held off and resisted temptation, but finally gonna read this one this month. I can't get too much into it because I don't want to read the flap and spoil myself or you if you haven't read the first book, but I love the world that Andrea Stewart has created. It's a multi-POV, sort of Eastern Asian inspired fantasy that takes place across sort of a scattering of islands called the Sukai Empire, and there's a really interesting magical element sort of at the center of it called Boneshard magic, where the user of this magic can sort of inscribe demands on bone shards and create these like Frankenstein creatures who will then go and sort of live out those commands. That's super interesting to me, and I'm really curious to see how that continues to develop. There's also a character named Jovis, who's sort of a reluctant hero figure, and he's got an animal companion named Mephi, who is just the star of the show. So I can't wait to read more about them. Yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of sort of open questions that the first book sort of set up for this one to hopefully answer. So I'm so excited. And yeah, so definitely gonna be reading this one this month. And finally, I don't have it with me because it's not out yet, but I'm planning on reading the second book in the Crescent City series by Sarah J. Maas, and that is House of Sky and Breath. Again, don't have it yet. It comes out February 15th, I believe, and I definitely plan on vlogging that one, so that'll be fun. I recently read the first book, House of Earth and Blood, with my friend Stephanie, and I really liked it. I think it was sort of messy at first, but the ending honestly redeemed any issues I had with the beginning, and I'm really excited to get into the second one. Stephanie unfortunately didn't quite love it so much, so I don't think this will be a buddy read, unfortunately, but oh well. And I don't know where this second book is going to take us, but the first book really focused on this character named Bryce. She is half fae, and sort of her relationship with this fallen angel figure named Hunt. They worked together to solve the mystery of her best friend Danica's brutal death. This takes place in a world full of sort of very diverse magical characters. There's fae, there's mermaids, there's angels, there's demons, and it's a lot of fun. I quite like how all these different sort of mythological creatures sort of interact, and how they live in sort of this urban fantasy setting is really interesting. There's cell phones, there's drugs, they live in a city, you know, she lives in an apartment, she's living like a material life, and it's a lot of fun. Sarah J. Maas, I think, is really good at creating characters that you ultimately like really want to root for, and her character relationships are really fun to watch grow. So I don't think she's the best writer in the world, but she's she knows how to write a fun story. So I'm excited to pick this one up, and I will probably be vlogging it, so look out for that later this month. And yeah, that wraps up my February TBR. It's quite a few books, so hopefully I'll be able to get to them all. I usually try to leave myself a little bit more room to sort of go off script and mood read, but these are all books I'm really excited to read, so I think I will be able to manage to read, if not all of these, then most of these. So I'm excited. Let me know down in the comments what you think I should start off with first. Which ones are you most curious about hearing my thoughts on? I'd love to know. And thank you guys so much for watching this video. Feel free to follow my socials down in the description box below, like this video, subscribe to this channel, you know the deal, and have a lovely day. Bye.